Anguttara Nikaya. It's a beautiful sutra. It's like when you remember about somebody, and it's somebody who's left, and then but they're not really, they haven't really left. They are around us, and I think this gives a really positive thought about it. And it goes like this. This body is not me. I'm not limited by this body. I'm life without boundaries. I've never been born, and I have never died. Look at the ocean and the sky filled with stars, manifestations from my wondrous true mind. Since before time, I have been free. Birth and death are only doors through which we pass. Through which we pass sacred thresholds on our journey. Birth and death are a game of hide and seek. So laugh and smile with me, hold my hand. Let us say goodbye to meet again soon. We meet today, we will meet again tomorrow. We will meet at the source every moment. We meet each other in all forms of life. We meet each other in all forms of life.
I am Olivia Clementine, and this is Love and Liberation. Today our guest is Tenzin Choegyal. Tenzin is a Tibetan artist, composer, activist, musical director, and cultural ambassador. Born to a family of Tibetan nomads, Tenzin Choegyal was forced into exile in India as his family fled the repression in Tibet. As a child, Tenzin would listen to his mother singing in the nomadic style, and he attributes much of his passion for that genre to her early influence. I would love to wander a bit through your Tibetan lineage, your heritage, as well as your music. And I wanted to first just ask you, what part of Tibet are you originally from?
I'm from the southern Tibet. My families were nomads. So my mom and dad, they lived in the southern Tibet, near a village near the Mount Kailash. And then in the early 70s, during the Cultural Revolution, when everyone was coming out into exile to find a refuge, and following His Holiness the Dalai Lama's footsteps, going into exile. My parents also left, and I was born around that time. And so I actually came out with them as a toddler. Yeah, and crossed the mountains. I don't really remember anything other than the times that I've spent from being in Nepal. I don't really remember the time that, I was probably just a toddler. And so I probably would have been on their back being carried into exile, crossing over the mountains. And my parents had 9 kids. My mom had 9 kids, and 5 of them survived. So we are now 5 siblings scattered around the globe. The art that I practice is more of from hearing my mother's singing and my father's, I think, the karmic imprint of hearing. My elders, like especially my mom's singing and my father's flute playing as I was growing up. So I didn't really get to spend much time with my father because he passed away when I was very young in Swambu in Nepal, Mandu. But I do have a very vivid memories of his long hair with braided red tassel around his long hair, and then he would wear it around like this and leave the red tassel coming out of one side of the cheek, and he was pretty like stern and tall, and but I don't really see his face because I was probably very young to remember his face, and it's kind of in the older tradition, especially in the nomadic lay people's tradition. There's this superstition of not keeping the photos of ones who have departed. So when my father departed and left the physical body, my mom like gave all the things that belonged to my father to everyone as a like last act of generosity. And then also like burned all the photos that maybe there was a couple of photos at that time. So yeah, I don't even have a photo to actually picture his face, but I have the sound of him, the flute playing. And then he used, especially in the evenings, he used to play his flute, and just there is a Tibetan alcohol, like a brew called chang. So he would sip on those, and and let the night come along as he played play the flute. So those vivid memories are in my somewhere in my subconscious. And so every time these days when I play my flute, I try to picture him, but his face doesn't come around. But his long hair, and as I said before, and the red tassel and the tallness of him, and sipping the chang away, and his flute playing, all those comes in my memory. But I'm still not able to. So it's kind of like looking at the moon, and the moon is so beautiful, but it, like you want to picture a face in the moon, but you don't see any face in there. It's kind of like that. It's like and after my father passed away, my mom decided to send me and my younger brother and all the others to orphanage in Tibetan Children's Village School in India. So I stayed there all of my young age. I stayed in that school with 3,000 other kids, and so I had a modern education, kind of like through that school. And somehow my mom couldn't handle being away from. She was living in Nepal, and then her kids were spread around in India. So she also came over to India and became ayah for foster parents for another school, which is like 12 hours bus ride from Dharamsala. So it was quite like it's a very Tibetan refugee story where kids and families were scattered, but they were still together, but still scattered between. And she was looking after hundreds of kids in another school while I was being looked after by another foster parent in Dharamsala. So yeah, but I'm really, really glad that I went through that school. Now these days, whenever I go around the globe, play to present my art, there are kids from that school who are like living in all parts of the globe, and I get to see them and couch surf with them at their place. So, and then we reminisce in the times that we spent in that village, which was like a big family. I think this became a really long answer for a short question.
It's so great. You know, there's so many things I actually wanted to ask that you just brought up. So yeah, I really appreciate it. And it really kind of paints a picture of my experience of your music in many ways, where there's like such a deep feeling, like there, it's kind of, I can feel the intense refugee heart, like the intense longing, that kind of not being able to see the moon's face. And then also like the resilience and the gratitude, like it's such rich, I feel like I can feel so much of what you just shared in the way you play. So it's interesting hearing just the parts that you shared in those few minutes.
Thank you.
Like, as you were saying in the beginning, you're from a nomadic lineage, and your music is from the sound of your mother's voice and the flute playing of your father. There's a lot of the influence and their influence. And I'm curious what nomadic songs are about. Like when you were growing up, what did they sing about? And
I guess it's most of the songs, then, like, as most of the folk traditions, as part of most, they are about the mountains, the skies, the majestic forests, and the birds, and like a lot of the time, I think just about life and emotions through metaphors, like like when you sing about the sky, it's like the sky as big as the mind, infinite as the mind, and the mountains, like how the mountains are as beautiful to look at, but it's an obstacle to cross, to see somebody, or but then there is, like how the glaciers of the mountain feeds the beings downstream. And so it's about, like, and then how it's, and also occasionally we believe that there are gods and goddesses that live in these spaces. So it's paying homage to these space that is your abode. At the same time, there's other beings that live, the formless and the form beings. So it's paying homage to them. So it's like many folklores that like the nomadic style of the lineage of nomadic singing and the writing is in the skill of how metaphorically you can express yourself by symbolisms of these natures around you. Like, hope that makes a little bit of sense.
It totally does. It's really beautiful. Do you sing, when you're actually singing now, do you sing any traditional nomadic songs?
I think a story that you keep, a lineage that you hold, that is more important for me than the melody or because melodies are created by like spontaneously most of the time. But then, like the essence of, so when we say tradition, I think my parents' time, when they called it a tradition, it would have been a contemporary when it was first born, that song or that particular lyrics was first born, it would have been contemporary at that point of time. And then it became a tradition when we listen after 100 years or something. So it's a, what is that called? When you talk about contemporary and tradition, I think it's very thin line.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, you know, like I believe in that. But at the same time, the knowledge that has been passed on, the wisdom that has been passed on, either orally or in written format, they are I think, keeping the essence of that in your whatever practice you are into. I think the essence should be there every time, but because of the time that you are living in, you would change the way you practice it. And for me, I'm a holder of the lineage holder of Tibetan nomads, but at the same time, I'm not living like my parents. I'm not singing in the mountains, or I mean, I do sing in the mountains when I'm traveling, but it's not part of my daily life at this point of time. And my parents wouldn't have sing into a video contraption. So, you know, like, so it's at the very core of it, I think the teachings, the essence, that should be in your practice. Other than that, I think you move any tradition, you move on. There's a beautiful, a friend, my very dear friend, Philip Glass, he said one time, you know, if something like this, I can't remember exactly how he said it, but something like, if you are in connection with your lineage, or if you hold the lineage, the essence of your lineage dearly, then you will never be lonely. You know, like, so I think this, something like that. I can't exactly, so you can find that later on and put the exact quote, but yeah, something like that he said. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, well, it's interesting, like your style of singing is very evocative, the ranges and the depth that it's coming from. And I'm interested if, like, would you speak about this form of singing? Is this connected to the essence of nomadic singing, or just the essence of you, what you're holding calls from?
basically, I think, because this whole music, the practice that I have been going through, it's all born from my listening and hearing from my elders and especially from my parents. So innately, I would say that it's the essence is holding onto that lineage, but at the same time, the way I sing and way I express is very, like, very, I think, very my style in a way. It's with the essence of like the Tibet in it. So, like, probably I would, if you can see the essence, I would call it, you know, like, do you know the Tibetan staple food, tsampa?
Mm-hmm.
So I would call it, you know, like if you can see my songs, I would call it like a tsampa that has got like cheese and mixed with other, but then there is the taste of the tsampa in there all the time. At the same time, because of tsampa being traveling to US, Europe, South America, India, so it's all got, like, occasionally tsampa gets mixed up with all these things, and then like bring on those, so the influence of those, like I've been very fortunate by being able to collaborate with many amazing artists from around the globe. But whenever you hear these collaborations, I would positively say that in the essence of my songs in these collaborations, you will be able to hear Tibet in it. Like you would be able to taste the tsampa in it. Yeah.
I love it. That's a really helpful analogy. Now I'm always going to hear the tsampa in your music.
And tsampa is a very, like, I don't think there's any other food that would describe as a Tibetan staple food other than tsampa. Yeah, like all the rest of the food probably would have influence from somewhere else that came, but tsampa definitely came from Tibet. It was born in Tibet. Yeah.
Thinking of a few minutes back, you were talking about spontaneous songs, and I mean, at least when I think of Tibetan songs, I think of spontaneous songs from yogis. And do you have a connection with spontaneous yogi songs, or any particular spontaneous yogis that like to sing you feel a connection with?
I have, like, for last 20 odd years, I've been practicing and learning about dealing with death. And death has been a very huge part of my practice. And so I, like, very closely, after, it was more about when my mom and dad passed away. I was quite young, so I wasn't able to do all the rituals that I needed to do for them in terms of practice, spiritual practice, so when I first came into Australia in 97, I think it was 97 or 96, I can't exactly remember. I met with a great Tibetan teacher. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is always in my heart every day, and his teachings are always in my heart. But then I met with Namkai Norbu, that was my first meeting in person with him in 97. I think he used to come to Australia every January. And at that meeting, after his teaching, I went up to him and said, asked him, I've always had this back in the back of my mind. I wasn't able to do the rituals that I needed to do for my parents' departure. And then he said to me, read Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is actually in Tibetan, it's parrot, which means liberation through hearing. And so I started reading, and then he definitely said one thing, which was, even though they have been passed away long time ago, but when you read the book and the text from that book, visualize whoever you want to right in front of you in flesh and blood, and then read it, and wherever they are, either they are born in any realm, they will be able to hear it, and it will help them. So it's been a huge practice of me. And then every time, I really love, as you asked about this, I really love there's a passage in there, the safe passage. I really love. Occasionally, I share it on my social media. Quite like every time when I hear about someone needing a prayer, or I share this little stanza. I'll read that to you. I'll find that. Where is it? Yeah, it's a short little passage from Parrot Turtle, and it says, "May the element of space not rise up as enemy. May you see the realm of the blue Buddha. May the element of water not rise up as enemy. May you see the realm of white Buddha. May the element of earth not rise up as enemy. May you see the realm of yellow Buddha. May the element of fire not rise up as enemy. May you see the realm of red Buddha. May the element of air not rise up as enemy. May you see the realm of white Buddha. May the rainbow of elements not rise up as enemy. May you see the realms of all the Buddhas. May the sounds, lights, and ray not rise up as enemies. May you see the infinite realms of the peaceful and the wrathful ones. May you know all the sounds as your own sound. May you know all the lights as your own light. May you know all the rays as your own ray. May you spontaneously know the pardo as yourself. May you attain the realms of all the three kayas." So it's a little passage from the huge text. And when you read them in Tibetan, the text actually is, it feels like the text is reading itself to you. You know, like I have felt that many times, you know, like the text is super powerful, and it feels like the text is coming out of the pages and reading it to you. You could hear it, even though it's a black ink on white papers, but you could hear them, those texts. And so it has a very huge this little passage, it actually captures the whole nature of the hearing part of the liberation through hearing. There's a Khenpo Geshe Tashitsering who lives in Brisbane in Australia, and he was the resident teacher, Khensu Rinpoche. He was the resident teacher of the FPMT Buddhist Center in Chenrezig in Udlo. And even though I wasn't like a translator, but he didn't have a translator at that point of time, and somehow the stars aligned, and he asked me, the institute, Chenrezig Institute, asked me to be his translator. So I learned a lot. I wasn't a great translator, but that time, the 2 years time that I spent being his translator, was a huge learning curve for me. I mean, I grew up with the faith part of the religion, Buddhist religion, and I used to go to almost every teaching by His Holiness the Dalai Lama in India. But until I became the translator of that institute, the philosophy of Buddhism was just in the surface level of my mental conception, and but then I perceive a lot more that in depth during those 2 years, and I think my practice became a little bit better, I think. And so I would say I wasn't there for being a translator. Somehow the stars the alignment just made me fall into that space. And probably at that point of time, I needed that practice. And so, yeah.
And are you still doing the practice now?
Yeah. Every day, like in these days, most of my practice is in the music. It's actually, my music is not something separate from my practice. It's part of my practice. And also anything else that I do, I try to make it as a practice. Even the little angers that arises within me becomes like all these little things and the big things emotionally, whatever happens to myself, I think it's part of my practice. And like you reflect back and go, why did I do that? And how did that happen? And what was, reflect back in your action. And then sometimes you go, oh, that wasn't so good, Tenzin. Or sometimes you pat on your shoulder and go, yeah, you did a good job there. Mm-hmm. So occasionally, I think we forget sometimes when you do something really great or something that you are proud of, you should pat yourself on your shoulder. I think we forget to do that sometimes. And we wait for someone else to say it. Instead, like you yourself should actually acknowledge that you did a good work for the benefit of other beings or benefit of yourself as well. So so sometimes we forget that, and I know, a lot of the Buddhist text says self-cherishing is not good, but I don't think that is a self-cherishing thing to do. Like it's actually empowering yourself to do more better things in the future, So, and then when negative emotions arises, just let them arise and then deal with it, observe it and deal with it. And then even when you are singing, like sometimes in the song, anger arises. If you are singing about something that is atrocity by Chinese for the Tibetans or the Uyghurs, like in the song you are singing about some human right and government not doing so great for the benefit of others, then this anger arises, but then that anger is actually transformed into a song which is projected in a very different way. Every emotion, you can map it in a song as well. The practice of my art has become a daily practice of spiritual path as well.
I'm thinking of your most recent album that just came out, the collaboration, Yeshi Dolma.
Yeah.
And that one feels also very emotionally multi-layered and just so beautiful. And why did you choose that title?
Yeshi Dolma, initially I was going to call it, mystical Tibet.
Very different.
It's very different because
Yeah.
we like the collaboration that I've been doing with Camerata at the Queensland Chamber Orchestra and my dear friend Catherine Foote, who did all the string arrangements. I mean, over the last 10, 15 years, with Catherine, we used to sit and catch up on chais and rice and dal and momos, and then discuss how we should arrange these pieces. And that's how it all evolved into coming into working with the chamber orchestra. And then, when we recorded the whole album during the pandemic, just 2020, when it was in the peak, where everyone was even so fearful of just breathing into someone else's space. We were even fearful of breathing the air that is around us. And it was recorded during that time. And then it took a little while to put it out as these little journeys take when it needs to come out and say, okay, the baby's now really born. And so we just released it this beginning of this year. And initially, we've been always doing a concert called Mystical Tibet. So we thought maybe we should call it Mystical Tibet. But then there is one song it's taken like an adaptation or a rendition of old Tibetan song, folk tune, called, so this Yeshi Dolma was particularly from that past. So I took the little melody of that and then put my own lyrics to it. And then I called it Yeshi Dolma. And in the song, it says, the moon that is rising from the east, please don't set in the west. Always stay in the middle so that I can always see you. So it's kind of asking something not to die, but that is really part of your life. So, and then it says about with body, speech, and mind, I'm remembering you, Yeshi Dolma. So in the lyrics, it says that it's a very short piece, I think it's about 3.5 minute piece. And so that's why, when we were calling it, and then I thought, why don't I just call it Yeshi Dolma and then pay homage to her, and also her generation, who have gone through so much of struggle and hardship in the early times of the coming into exile. And so it's kind of like that song is like a homage to my parents through her name, and then her generation, who when they first came out into exile, I think there always was, I have very vivid memories of visiting many older generation houses, their homes. They were always packed up. Their boxes were always packed up, ready to go. And it's not like, now these days, all the Tibetans who are scattered around, they have bought big land and big houses, and there's and then seems like they're going to settle in that space that they're living now. But at that point of time, late 70s, early 80s, and even till mid 90s, all the generation of that time, of my mother's time, they were always ready to head back home. But most of them, I think, passed away without being able to fulfill that wish of seeing their homeland once again. But then I'm pretty sure, like at times I used to think, like, I'm pretty sure my mother might be reborn in Tibet, or like I like to think like my father is maybe running around doing something amazing things around somewhere, like. So can I read this another stanza?
Yes.
With this, I remembered about this little sutra from Anguttara Nikaya. It's a beautiful sutra. It's like when you remember about somebody, and it's somebody who's left, and then but they're not really, they haven't really left. They are around us, and I think this gives a really positive thought about it. And it goes like this: this body is not me. I'm not limited by this body. I'm life without boundaries. I've never been born, and I have never died. Look at the ocean and the sky filled with stars, manifestations from my wondrous true mind. Since before time, I have been free. Birth and death are only doors through which we pass. Through which we pass sacred thresholds on our journey. Birth and death are a game of hide and seek. So laugh and smile with me, hold my hand. Let us say goodbye to meet again soon. We meet today, we will meet again tomorrow. We will meet at the source every moment. We meet each other in all forms of life. We meet each other in all forms of life. And yeah, so this little sutra from Anguttara Nikaya is a very beautiful, when you feel sad about something, it's actually, takes away that sadness. I mean, it's good to be sad anyway. Mm-hmm. It's good to feel the sadness. When you are in love with life, then I think, you also have to deal with the death part of it as well. Like a lot of us, I think, never think about the death of anything. If you think about it, every moment you are dealing with death. Even your thoughts, like the thought that just arised is gone. It's and whatever speech that I said just before, it's already gone and dead. And then you don't know what's going to happen next. And that's the beauty of it. You don't know what's going to happen next. Not knowing something, I think, is and then in that, when you don't know something, then that means you are actually creating something new and learning something new. Or else, if we are all born with something, born with all the things pre-learned, then probably we would be all Buddhas. I mean, we are all Buddhas in our own rights, but we have the seed of Buddhahood, the awakened one. We all have that. But, like we have to put an effort into it to awaken that seed. And I try to do that with my music.
It's relieving to hear of the no birth, no death. It's relieving to talk about it. It's especially coming from someone whose family and whole, Tibetan people are. I'm not a refugee. I don't have the experience of not being able to go back to my homeland. I can't imagine that. And so just having your perspective on working with the spectrum of that, the aliveness, enjoying life, the how to work with death, how to work with losing your parents at such a young age and not having the space. I mean, I'm just appreciating what you're sharing.
Thank you. And I mean, I guess we all are going through different, like in a way, like His Holiness, the way His Holiness puts so simply, we are all one human family. We have emotionally, physically, mentally, we are all one. And then in those all oneness, there are little differences. And we just have to work into that little difference so that we actually, with dialogue, and then we can actually live together as a one human family, supporting each other, instead of like say, Chinese brothers and sisters are not different from me. They are human, and I'm pretty sure to the core of it, we are all same. But the greed and the business and the minings and what the land of Tibet can offer to China, they don't want to share it. And it should be, like Tibetans would share their land with their brothers and sisters. Like as His Holiness has always said, like staying in the middle path. We won't achieve anything with arms. Disarmament and following the path of non-violence with dialogue, we'll be able to solve the differences. But then the communist Chinese regime are not in that space yet. So hopefully they will come to awaken state, and one day, and then they will realize that how by destroying the people of Tibet and the land of Tibet is destroying themselves at the same time. It's not, so I hope that realization will come sooner than late. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because, there's many things the Chinese occupation reminds me of, but really epitomizes the modern way of living, like the worst parts of the modern way of living, where we don't realize that we are interconnected, that we think humans are more important than anybody in the world, that land isn't sacred, this desire to control. I think I read someplace that you didn't mean to become an activist, but now you have like this festival every year and people come to you, from my understanding, on this.
Yeah, it is because of my practice in the art, and because of having the platform, I became an accidental activist. And but then also, I think when you are born into a family that became a refugee very, like as soon as you were born. So even I would say that I was already an activist when I was in my mother's womb, because probably I was about to go into exile. So in that, like this, so yeah, I was an accidental activist. My passion for the humanity and making it a better place, the planet, the fragile home that we have, even though it looks so strong from the space above, but the humans have made it fragile, more fragile than it should be. I mean, we both are probably in the same state of mind about our home in terms of how we can protect it and give it a little bit more longevity, like, yeah. Do you read Jakarta stories? when Buddha was a bird, or when Buddha was a monkey, or when Buddha was elephant, or like when Buddha took rebirth in all these little and like other realms, like in the realm of the god and goddesses, or in the realm of the animals, or even in the hungry ghosts, or like all these little stories. It's very beautiful. So if you get time to read them,
I would love to. Do you recommend any versions?
There's one little one about the parrot, the golden the parrot, how she got all this beautiful green, yellow, red, like the colors of the prayer flags. How she got all these colors. Yeah, it's very beautiful. That little story is a beautiful story. It goes something like like in this jewel mountain forest between Tibet and India. There was all these beautiful animals living there, like surrounded by mountains and all this. And then there was this parrot who was actually gray in color. But then one day lightning struck one of the tree, and the forest was on fire. And in that space there was lakes and rivers and everything, like very waterfalls and all these beautiful spaces. And all the animals, and the forests were living happily over there. But then the lightning strike, and the forest caught on fire. And from the sky, as the forest was catching on fire, the parrot saw that, and she started announcing it to all the animals and asked them to go to safety near the river or the lake, or any like by the waterfall or something. But some of them started laughing at laughing at her, because oh, it's not going to happen, and nothing's going to happen to us. And some of them left. And as she saw animals were struggling, then she went to the rivers and by nearby river and dipped herself in the water, and then flew over the forest and and flapped her feathers to put off the fire. And she was doing that back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And on seeing that from the god and goddesses realms, the realms of the god, all the gods saw her doing that. And they were laughing at her and saying, like, how foolish this little gray parrot is, trying to put fire off with this little feather of like little droplets of water. And on seeing that, one of the gods felt so sorry for him and wanted to go in person and tell her that there is no use of doing that. And then as that god wanted to do that, he turned himself into an eagle and flew towards the parrot and started asking her to save herself. And as he was trying to discourage the parrot just says to him, these are my family, and I will put all my effort into even saving one of them. And on hearing that, as the gods and goddesses are not known for tears, they don't know what sadness is until the time the death comes. They don't know. They only live in the world of happiness and see everything. And in that, and on hearing that, this particular god became somehow naturally very teary, and he started shedding tears without knowing what it was, where it was coming from. As the tears started dropping as his tears, it became a huge like started pouring over the forest, and whole forest was saved. And as his tears dropped on the little parrot's feathers, the feathers turned into gold as the earth, blue as the sky, white as the space, and then green as the forest. Like so. And that's how this little parrot got all these different colors. The way that traditionally it is told is when this bodhisattva was a parrot. Like in the Jakarta, each story starts with, when this bodhisattva was a monkey, and then tells about the story of the monkey, how things happened to him or her. And yeah, so this is like little parrot who saved the forest when this bodhisattva supposedly this bodhisattva was the future Buddha, when the Buddha was not a Buddha, and when he was a little parrot, the Buddha, when he was a bodhisattva and took a rebirth in the realm of the birds as a parrot.